Hello fantastic creatures, I'm Fantasims and welcome to my channel. Now I know I said in my previous video that I'd show you how to make perfectly smooth circles in the next video, but I finished editing this video first, so I'll show you my gold rings of power later. If anything, this will be a sneak peek into how to make them at a much faster pace. Don't worry you slowpokes, I'll have a step-by-step real-time tutorial so you can make your own. So ages ago, a gorgeous, wonderful simmer friend of mine called Sunstar requested I build Stargate Atlantis, and I started building it a while ago, but I ran out of steam to finish it because I really had no clue how to create the Stargate portal. But with the new toolmod update that came out over a week ago, we can now rotate groups of objects together as one unit as if the group of objects are one object. I love it so much, which means making perfect circles is now easier than ever, so I figured I'd get back into finishing my Stargate Atlantis build. So this video is just the portal. I still need to finish the rest of the build, so that will be coming out later. And here you can see me struggling to figure out what objects to use to create the trim of the portal. Thankfully, Journey to Batuu metal objects all have a similar shade and grungy finish to them, so it's a lot easier to mix and match those items, but I still took forever trying to figure out how to give it a thick 3D shape leading into this debug water pool from Discovery University. I decided to shape the portal on the floor first before rotating the whole thing upright at the end, because I figured it would be easier to arrange the objects on the floor first. But if you do that, you have to make sure all the objects you're using can be rotated in different directions, else it will cause a lot of problems when you try to put it upright afterwards. Thankfully, this debug pool can be rotated, and it's quite huge, and it might actually be slightly bigger than the Stargate portal should be, but you can't shrink the pool, so my portal is not quite to scale, but who cares if it looks cool, right? This empty gap that I'm trying to figure out here is where the star chart lighting goes, but I was having a hard time figuring out what objects to use for it because originally it has a midnight sky color to it, and although I couldn't find anything blue that worked, I did come across a dine out sign that is a grayish blue and at least blended in with the metallic colors. Now before building this, I had never seen any Stargate series before, and I knew I'd need to watch it to get a better feel for what the build should look like, and to my surprise, I actually have really enjoyed it, especially all the cheeky humor that just makes it so fun. So I made sure to stream it while building so I'd get the right vibes going for the build. And I'm almost done with all Stargate Atlantis seasons, and I've started watching Stargate 1 as well. Too many shows are dark and angry nowadays, so it's been nice to have something relaxing to watch. Okay, so with this build I just needed to slope some more Star Wars benches to flow into the water, and then I took the modern sci-fi looking lamps from Discovery University and used them as the trim that goes around each star map section. And since I was going to rotate each main section by 10 degrees, I rotated the lamps by 5 and then -5 degrees on either side so that they would sit in the middle of the 10-degree sections. That probably sounded confusing, but you'll hopefully see what I mean when we finish rotating it. Something to keep in mind when you are using this new rotate around the center feature of the tool mod is that in order to make a perfect circle, you need the same exact objects on either side. Then you can select all the objects, duplicate them, and then rotate around center. Now there are these blue triangular dial things that slide around the Stargate portal, like a key where you align the arrows above the star system map images, and that connects the portal to another portal location in the galaxy. But there are only 9 arrows, so 360 degrees divided by 9 is 40 degrees, so I knew I'd need to rotate these particular arrow triangle dial thingy, whatever they are, by 40 degrees, which would get tricky on top of the whole wheel I just made. So I shaped the first triangle and then later built it as a separate circle to place on top of the original one. I also really struggled to figure out what objects to use for this as well, because we don't have a lot of triangular shaped objects in the game, and the best I found was this light up corner table from one of the stuff packs. I can't even remember which one it is off the top of my head, but anyway, I had to try and thicken the frame around it to hide the square corners. So I used more of the Discovery University lamps to frame it, and then more Journey to Batuu benches, which was a nightmare because everything kept poking through the other objects, which I didn't film all of that, but just know that it was frustrating. Very, very frustrating. It all worked out in the end, so the minor inconveniences were worth it. I think part of the issue was that not only did I have to make a triangle shape, but I had to slope it inwards towards the water too, and that's what caused the issues because I was using objects with very pokey square edges. The original Stargate from the show also has a bit more detail inside the triangle, but I'd already used a ton of objects and I knew I'd end up using even more when it came time to add the star maps, because the more lighting you use, the more the game will lag, and I didn't want to add to that because this object was already starting to become a beast. On top of that triangle are two pieces that stick out either side to help it glide around the gate, so I tilted either side by -10 and then 10 degrees so it curved with the circle. And I just used more of the Discover University lanterns and layered a bunch of them to thicken it up because the lamps are so skinny. It probably doesn't help having that many extra lamps, but I couldn't find another object with the same metal swatch. I guess I could have used a different object behind one lamp instead of layering a bunch of them, but hey, hindsight is 20/20, right? I always come up with better solutions when I'm not building. Isn't that always the way? Oh well, hopefully it won't cause too many problems in the full build. Then here I'm struggling with the benches poking through, but I just kept lowering and tilting it until the top of the bench was hidden. And the sides of the triangles have teal light stripes either side, so I use the get together wall light because it rotates backwards, but I didn't record myself doing all of it because I had to keep swiveling the camera a lot, so that would be nauseating to watch. Then here's how I rotated them each by 40 degrees. I had to have an identical version on the other side of the post to rotate it properly, so I ended up with a bunch of extra triangles that I had to delete. And in live mode I changed all the lights to teal so that I wouldn't have to individually click on the lights later to change them. And then it was time to overlap the triangle dials onto the main body of the portal, and I was nervous it would delete a bunch of stuff, but thankfully it didn't. But it did cause all the end tables to lower to the ground, so the square ones from Journey to Batuu and the light up ones from that other stuff pack I can't remember. So I selected them all with Tool so they're highlighted green, so that when I layered the triangles on top, even if all those objects dropped, they'd still be highlighted green and I could control them and elevate them back up, which is way easier than trying to find the objects once they're already hidden. Then I elevated the teal ones because they were easy enough to see and they had to be elevated at a different height anyway. Man, I just confused myself with that wordiness. It's hard to explain it all quickly when the footage is whizzing by. The next part was my favorite part, but I did most of it off camera because it took like 2 hours just to put the star charts on each of the 36 sections, and I tried to make them look as close to the original as possible using floor lights from Spa Day and circle wall lights tilted on their backs, and I couldn't quite make the exact identical shapes, but I still think they turned out pretty similar. Then I had to lower them onto the surface as much as I could. I mean, the surface is uneven, so some of them are floating a little if you look real close, but who even cares? Last step was nerve-wracking because I was waiting the whole time for my computer to crash, trying to move so many objects at once, but it didn't crash at all. Lucky me. So I elevated it and rotated it by 90 degrees and took note of how high it was so I could match it to the back piece. But that number ended up being wrong anyway. The back piece was just the same thing without all the lights and triangle pieces because that was just too many lights. Off camera I used a plank of wood to make sure the heights of both portal sides were the same, and then I used placement to drag the whole group in close to the front of the portal because placing the rooms on top of each other caused a bunch of objects to delete. And I know in the previous video I showed you that you can use the bug deletion fix mod, but when I tried it with this many objects my game crashed, so I used alt placement with toolmod instead. And actually TwistedMexi DM'd me yesterday and said that his bug deletion fix mod might not work properly because of the new update and that he's planning on adding it to the Better Build Buy mod, so that is awesome and I can't wait for that. Anyway, so here's the finished portal, and I put it on a beach because it looks so cool with the starry sky and blue sea. So this will be available as a room in my gallery, and the whole Stargate Atlantis build should be finished sometime in the near future. So I hope you enjoyed this quick little build. I appreciate you all so much and I freaking love you.